Hi, it's Brent from Black Crow Gaming, and I'm here with Rob today to talk to you about the new Codex Death Guard detachment, Champions of Contagion. This is a good one of the better detachments, so we thought we'd start talking about it. And I'm joined here for the first time with Rob, one of our Black Crow Gaming members. Nice to meet you, Rob.
Hi Brent, how are you?
Yeah, really, really good. Really excited to get these on the battlefield and continue playing with them. How are you finding them so far?
So I've had one game with Champions of Contagion against Tyranids. So it was the Monster Mash, all T12 monsters and whatnot.
Oh,
So I was like, okay, that's a good sort of stat check. And yeah, it went really well. So we are very killy now.
we are even though we don't have a lot of like strength 10 or 11 weapons, sorry, we've got so much lethal that the toughness of our opponents doesn't really matter sometimes, which is it's pretty good. It's pretty strong. So
Yeah, and I don't want to jump the shark, and not jump the shark, jump the slides or anything that we're going to be doing. Um, but there's surprisingly large amounts of rerolls in this detachment
it's what
specifically, and Death Guard in general. So we can fish for lethals, we can crit on fives and everything else. So that's something obviously we'll go into. But yeah, it's surprisingly efficient.
Oh yeah, this one of the things the index was really missing was rerolls. Like you could get the crit fives, you could get lots of lethals, but it just didn't have a lot of rerolls for fishing. So sometimes if you rolled badly, like you weren't, it wasn't sustainable the damage. Sometimes you
Yeah,
just rolled badly.
yeah, and you had no recourse. I mean, I think in the index you pretty much had reroll wounds of one with Mortarion,
Yeah,
which was okay. It's not bad. And then Lord of Virulence gave you full rerolls to wound on range, and in the index we weren't a ranged army.
no, and
Nowadays, yeah, we are.
yeah, and especially if he was only joining Blight Lord or Death Shroud Terminators, it wasn't great
Yeah,
for reroll wounds on them.
no.
Okay, right. Here we go. Manifold Maladies. This is the detachment rule for Champions of Contagion. So at the start of the battle round, you can select one of the plagues listed in Nurgle's gift. So there's three of them. One is -1 to the armor if you're in contagion range. One is -1 to your movement, objective, and leadership characteristics. And the last one is -1 to your hit rolls. So normally you have one of these active, and it lasts for the whole game. You declare this in your declare battle formation step of the game. With Manifold Maladies, you can change every turn, and I've played a few games with it. It is a good detachment rule. It's being able to swap and change halfway through a game, depending on, maybe you've cleared all your opponent's killy stuff and they've just got tons of chaff left, and you just want the -1 to hit 'cause the armor save won't do anything. Yeah, there's a lot you can do to play around with it.
So I think as a detachment rule in a vacuum, it's not great.
Okay.
So if it didn't have all of the supporting stuff that we're going to talk about, I would say it's probably one of the weakest ones because generally speaking, when you face an opponent, you don't really have to think for very long about which contagion is going to be best. It's
Yeah.
almost always +1 to their save characteristic. Almost always.
Almost always, unless you're playing demons or like Gene Stealer cards.
Yeah,
That's it.
there's always some edge cases, but I mean, even custodies, counterintuitive because we've got a lot of AP2. So you might think, oh, well, we don't want +1 to their save, but actually it makes all your AP0 stuff AP1 effectively, it makes your AP1 stuff AP2, so on and so forth.
And it's better than
Um,
normal AP because you can't armor contempt against it. It's like
exactly.
it's super AP one, as it were.
Yeah. And I think, so because of that, in a vacuum, if this detachment rule was just that and none of the strats or the enhancements that we're going to talk about modified it in any way, I think this would be dead on arrival. Like, I don't think I'd even remotely look at this. There's a few edge cases where you might go,
Half.
um, sort of kind of like the example you stated, but with the OC, it could be,
Yeah, the OC
you
is
know,
the biggest one. Being able
in
to
a key
gain it.
turn, in a key turn, they've got loads of OC2, you've got a load of Terminators, and then you just switch to OC -1 to a minimum of one, obviously. And
Hmm.
if that flips an objective, that can win you the game. But still
It's an edge
pretty
case, yeah.
pretty weak. But the big caveat here is it's really good because of the support that's in the enhancements and the strats, which is obviously something we're going to be talking about shortly.
Yeah, and talking of enhancements, we'll go through
Yeah.
them now. So there are four, as with all detachments. They're all character specific, which I think is a weakness of two of them. I think there's only
Yeah.
two that I would ever consider using. The first one is final ingredient on the biologist putrefier. This is probably one of the best enhancements in the book. Like,
Yeah.
it could be said. So what happens is it goes on a biologist putrefier, and once per
Hmm.
battle, after the bearer's unit has fought, if a character unit was destroyed, you pick an additional plague to be active for the whole army. Um, as you've said, normally you already know which plague you're gonna pick. However, mid game or early, if you get it early game, if you're playing like Emperor's Children and they're throwing characters at you turn one, then being able to get like -1 to hit on all your units in like combat and shooting, it can feel like quite a big boost.
Yeah, and I think the important thing here, because I've seen people misunderstand this a little bit, is it has to be the BIOPS unit. So the BIOP himself doesn't have to actually kill anything.
Yes.
It's actually the unit, and it's not in melee or shooting, it's both. So I think that's just to clarify that with some people that may misread that. I do think it's great, and again, I don't want to jump forward too much, um, but in Index, you probably weren't taking a biologist putrefier. If we're honest, you might have done a plague bus, but you certainly weren't taking them in a brick of like 10 plague marines or anything like that. You know, you were taking fight first and you were taking crits on 5. Like that was, they were stapled onto plague marines. There was very little variation in that. This detachment specifically, and again, I don't want to jump forward too much, it makes the biologist putrefier, not auto include. Because there's other ways of getting crits on 5. So this strat really, I would say it's if you're taking a biop, this strat, this enhancement is auto include. Like, just pretend that the biop costs whatever. I can't remember the exact cost of this enhancement, but it's not a lot. It's 20 points or something like
I
that.
think it's 40 points or 45 points for the biop.
Yeah.
And
So
20 points.
65, 70 points, whatever, 100%. If you're taking a biop, you take this. And the reason why it's not auto-include as a character is because later on we'll talk about a way of getting crits on 5 without taking the biop. But the biop still gives everything lethal, which, pretty much everything in our codex does have lethal already. But
I think the only thing that doesn't have lethal already is the plasma gun and the melter gun. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's giving that much in terms of lethals. It's just that extra little pip of lethal 5s.
I think the bonus here is obviously having 2 contagions active is just crazy. Like that's just so efficient, because what I would almost always do, if I've taken +1 to your save, I'm going to take -1 to hit.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm going to do that is because there is a way, obviously, of switching contagions, because we've just talked about that. But the one that you pick with final ingredient is static. So once you pick that one, that will always stay.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're looking at really is sort of value for money, if you like. So if you're taking +1 to save, if that's already active, I would maybe pick that one as your final ingredient one, and then switch between -1 to hit and -1 OC with the detachment, because that way you've always got the +1 save, and you can, because you're never going to switch the +1 save.
No, and I'll be honest, the only time I use the objective, the OC one really, is when I'm using it on the. I do have a list where I use the cornucophagus, and I use it as a way to secure my expansion objective. So he's basically sat there with the +1 OC, or -1 objective control is what I'm looking for really, with a bunch of plague marines. So that's the only time I use the other plague. So you're right, you're really looking at those two in particular to.
But I think specifically, I know it feels counterintuitive, because if you've got +1 save that you picked at the start of that round, and then you proc this, your first instinct's going to be like, well, I'm going to pick the one I'm not already active in. But
Yes.
I personally think that's wrong. I really do
You pick
think
the one you're active in, yeah, so
pick
that
the
you
one you're
keep
active
it.
in, because then that is always active for the rest of the game. You pick that one at the start of the game for a reason. Switch between the other two. So,
Realistically, because you pick at the start of the battle round, normally you're only going to be playing half a turn with only one
yeah,
active, so you're not losing that much
no,
just to cement this for the rest of the game.
yeah,
Mm. So the other the next two enhancements, one of them's okay. I can see some use with it. This is the Visions of Virulence for the Malignant Playcaster. Now, the Playcaster's stonks have gone up because he gives
mm,
sustained now in the Codex.
yeah,
And because we now have, we've jumped the gun a bit, but we've got access to some strats which maybe nullify the need for some characters, you now see him being played with maybe the Putrefier or someone else, just so that you can get lethal sustain fives, and
yeah.
it's a lovely little combo.
And in the index, obviously, we had a strat that allowed you to get sustained one, or sustained two if you're on an infected objective.
Hmm.
There are currently no strats in any detachments that give us sustained. So the only way we can get sustained now is from characters. So the Plaguecaster and the Lord of Contagion are the only two, ways really that we get sustained anymore,
Yeah.
sort of gifted to a unit. So with that in mind, obviously, the Playcaster's good. This particular enhancement, don't build around it.
No, no. It's if you've got 20 points spare.
Points, because ultimately he's going to be attached to Plague Marines who do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I guess the only benefit of this is that you can shoot one target with the Plague Marines and then another target just with the Plaguecaster, so you can double tag 2 units. I mean, ultimately, because it's happening in the shooting phase, you can't like piggyback on a Death Shroud 6-inch deep strike onto it or anything like that. So the only real benefit is I want to shoot 2 targets, because if you're charging them, they're afflicted anyway. And Champions of Contagion isn't primarily a shooting detachment. And shooting's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. We're going to have heavy blade launchers in this. We're going to have perhaps predators or whatever, blight haulers. That extra AP, the +1 saves, can be fantastic. But honestly, I think we're going to get it other ways.
Yes,
So,
yeah, completely agree.
yeah,
The other one, which is a bit mediocre, is the Needle of Nurgle. This is for Plague Surgeon only,
yeah,
and rather than healing one model per turn, you heal D3. So it's not even guaranteed that you'll get any more than you
yeah.
normally have. And not many people run Plague Surgeons anyway, unfortunately. Like I feel like they've missed a trick. They could have given him like a Feel No Pain or something
Yeah.
interesting. But as he is, he doesn't see a lot of
I,
playing games.
I think this is this enhancement is the only way that you'd ever even consider a plague surgeon, and even then, probably not. To be honest, what they should have done is 6+ feel no pain if he's in the if he's leading, and if you put this enhancement on, it's a 5+ or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's too broken on that many plague marines. I really don't know. Yeah,
I don't know.
make it cost 35 or something. But,
They're only I know they're toughness 6, but as
mm,
someone who's played a lot of Gravis bodies,
mm,
they're only a 3-up armor save with 2 wounds. Like it's
yeah,
not that hard to chew through Plague Marines.
yeah. Once
So
you've wounded them, yeah,
um, now the last enhancement is another one that I quite like. I think
mm-hmm.
there you don't build around it, but it's certainly got playing games, and it's a Cornucophagus. Or
Yeah,
Cornucophagus, however you want to say it, and it's for the new model, the Lord of Poxes.
mm,
Now, his special rules are a bit mediocre.
yeah,
He's good in combat, but he gives an 18-inch lone ops to his unit, and he increases his own contagion range by 3 inches. And what this does is it means you pick an additional plague at the start of the battle, and that is active just for him. As I sort of mentioned earlier, I quite like this on a unit that's going to go and hold an expansion objective, because it
yeah,
makes it hard for people to contest it cheaply. They can't just drop like 5 Votan warriors or 10 guardsmen on the
mm,
objective, because you can permanently leave him in the -1 objective control plague and be
yeah.
like, yep, plague marines there, they're OC2, and good times.
I 100% see this as him leading 5 plague marines, because in a 10-man squad he doesn't actually buff the 10 men.
Nope.
Um, So I don't have him in my list currently, not just because I don't own the model, because it's easy enough to proxy one, isn't it? But um, currently this is one of the only ways to get all 3 plagues active at once. With this enhancement, there is also a strat which we'll come to, but this is basically the most consistent way, if you like. +3 contagions, pretty good. Very situational, but you can imagine that he's holding an expansion objective. Somebody comes into 6.1 inches away from him. That's not going to help. And then we can deep strike some Death Shroud or rapid ingress some Death Shroud, and suddenly instead of him and 5 Plague Marines, there's now 3 Death Shroud there, or 6 and a character or whatever. So I think there's definitely some play to him. But if I was taking this, it would be him, 5 Plague Marines, 3 heavy weapons, and maybe a spear and a plasma or something, or blight launcher.
And also, he's quite expensive for the lieutenant models.
Yeah.
Because he's the only one that's good in combat, and I think he's about 30 points more than the other leaders.
Yeah.
And you definitely feel that when you're writing a list.
He's basically 1.5 Death Shroud, in a way, because he's got the same attack profile as 1.5 Death Shroud. He's got the same. Well, actually, no, he's a 3-up, 4-up, isn't he? So, and he's a toughness 6. So he's a bit defensively less than a Death Shroud.
He does have Dev Wounds, though.
He does, yeah. Lethal hits, Dev Wounds, odd combo, but I guess it's just, if you don't roll a 6 on the hit, you can roll a 6 on the wound, so not too bad. But yeah, basically, I would say final ingredient is auto-include if you've got a buy-up. The others, don't build around them. If you've got the points, great. That's it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So, shall we start looking at the stratagems? So we'll do
Yes.
this in order that are in the codex, even though, looking at it, it probably would have been better to mix them up so that you could see the combos better. So, sorry about that. We're going to go through them in the order they're in the codex. So the first one is Blessings of Filth. This is a 1 CP strat, and it's in your shooting phase or any fight phase. So that's quite important. And it's 1 Death Guard attached unit that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase. Each time a model in the unit makes an attack, an unmodified hit roll of 5+ scores a critical hit.
And I think this is something we perhaps should talk about, really, is the attached, because Champions of Contagion is about attached units. And for those that don't know, attached just literally means has a leader. And a lot of these strats, not this one actually, but a lot of these strats need 2 leaders to be attached. And the only way we can do that currently is with Plague Marines or with Potswalkers. So there is a way, oddly, of getting Typhus and a Bellboy with 10 Potswalkers, 20 Potswalkers. If you do that, more power to you.
Fair play to you, yeah.
So I think with this, it's one of those things where, obviously, as a strat, absolutely fantastic. Lethal in on 5s is amazing, and this is the only one that doesn't need 2 characters.
And also,
to proc.
As we alluded to, Lethal 5s is great. Probably the best use for this strat is sustained 5s on a Lord of Contagion.
Oh God! So so my list that I played on Wednesday, I charged I'm really terrible with NID, so I apologise. It was a T12 NID. It had a 4-up invul. It had a bucket load of wounds, and it had all slimy.
Did it have a Feel No Pain as well?
Can't remember, but it definitely had a 4-up invul. So I put 6 Death Shroud and the Lord of Contagion in, and I popped this strat. So I'm sustained 1, lethal and sustained on 5s, and I'm also lance, so I'm +1 to wound.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hitting on 2s, I'm critting on 5s, and I'm wounding on 4s. And when I tell you that I did enough damage to kill it nearly 3 times,
I'm not surprised.
I could have charged that thing with just 3 Death Shroud and the Lord of Contagion. I'm fairly sure he would have died. I didn't roll the Lord of Contagion's dice because there was no need to. It was dead, Jim.
you'll be seeing this combination a lot. You'll be seeing a lot of Lord Contagions with 6 Death Shrouds coming 6 inches away and just killing something. Well, if you've got a core unit in your army, they'll just kill it.
And obviously, I don't want to spoil the rest of the strats, but I think this strat, if you're in a position to charge, and you're in a position to charge with Death Shroud, and you have 1 CP, this is what we're spending on.
It's a bit of a no-brainer.
Obviously re-roll the charge because you can't use it if you're not in the charge range. But yeah, this is probably one of the. I think I would use this if it cost 2. To be perfectly honest.
Oh, I can see it getting nerfed to 2 CP. I can see that happening in the future.
Because in an edge case, if you're using Plague Marines and you've decided I don't need crits on 5 on a biop. I want sustained 1, but I also want the fights first from the foul blight spawn. If that's the route you've gone, now you can do that same combo on 10 Plague Marines where you're sustained 1, crits 5.
Yeah, plague cast on a foul blight spawn.
Yeah.
With, as we said, all the weapons are mostly lethal anyway, so they'll be lethal sustained on 5s.
Yeah.
This spicy little strat.
I mean, if you rated this on a DC BAS, then this would be like Omega S or something.
Yeah.
I genuinely think it's just one of the. I think in a lot of detachments, a lot of other armies, having crits 5 would be that's okay. In Death Guard, it's like.
I mean, look at Space Marines. They actually took the crit 5s from the Fire Discipline out because it was so good. Because it was like whatever they did to it, they'd nerf a unit and they'd just slap this crit 5s on the next best unit.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's enough about Blessings of Filth. It's great. That's all you need to know. Okay, Malignance Magnified. This is 2 CP and it happens in your shooting phase or the fight phase. 1 Death Guard attached unit that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, if that target is below starting strength, you can re-roll the hit roll and you can re-roll the wound roll. Now, I'm just going to say one quick thing. If you get multi-charged, it's not on the unit that you're attacking gets targeted, it's your unit. So you can still... you can attack multiple units, you can have some attacking the units that's wounded, and that gives this a lot of play.
So at 2 CP, it's not one you can just use willy-nilly, and especially because of the cost of, as we've just said, crits on 5 is really fantastic. And you alluded to some combos here. So in my list that we're going to look at in a little bit, I've got a Demon Prince, and the Demon Prince, if you're within 12 inch of a unit, you can get a 1 CP discount on a strat that they use. So if you're going into a super hard target that for some reason sits Death Shroud on a Lord of Contagion can't kill, which I'm not 100% sure what, maybe a Titan, I don't know.
I think even then, with the amount of damage they do.
Let's be sensible. You've got 3 in a Lord of Contagion. That's not going to auto kill every model in the game. So I'm thinking maybe you're looking at Deathwing Knights is a good one because they're -1 damage, and we don't have Morty to ignore that anymore. So 3 Death Shroud and a Lord of Contagion. I did the maths. It probably kills 5 Deathwing Knights, but it's close.
Yeah.
It's really close. A couple of spiked 4+s or a couple of 1s on our side. You're not going to want to rely on that.
There's no kill like overkill.
So then, if we go, I've got 2 CP, and I really, really need those Deathwing Knights dead. That's a big chunk of their army. It's a really big thing that's in my way. Without the Demon Prince, you've got 2 CP. You use this, perfect. With the Demon Prince, you've got 2 CP. You use this and crits on 5, and those Deathwing Knights are dead with 3 Death Shroud and a lot of Contagion. They just are. So you roll everything. Anything that's not a 5 or a 6, you pick back up and you roll it again.
Yeah.
Because you're only failing on 1s. So chances are anything that you roll to hit is probably still a hit. but you're going to pick up the odd 5s and 6s.
Yeah, mathematically, you're better off re-rolling everything because
Yeah.
like a third of the ones hit, and
Yeah.
it gets sustained. And as you said, the Demon Prince he's very good value for points because is it just infantry that his aura.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I think it might be.
Yeah, if it's just infantry, it's still good. You know, he's a really good support unit for Death Shroud or for Plague Marines. So
I'm definitely not looking at my phone to check.
No, it's okay. I'll keep talking. This is also it's the biggest problem with this is making sure that you wound the enemy before they get into combat. So being able to shoot them or
it is not infantry.
It's not infantry. It's all Death Guard units.
All Death Guard. I thought it was, but I didn't want to commit to it.
That is stonks for the Demon Prince.
And I think it's worth noting as well, obviously the model that you're attacking has to be below starting strength, but actually we've got some flamers.
Yes.
You know, we are going to be able to do some damage. It might not be a lot, but we're going to get you below starting strength. Yeah. So.
Okay, so the next.
And the non-contagion's got a grenade, just to really, you know, if you're really CP greedy and you've got loads of CP.
If you've got a CP for grenades, you better make sure you've got a CP for crit 5s.
Yeah.
Okay, so Grotesque Fortitude. This is another pretty good strat. It's 1 CP, and it happens in your opponent's shooting phase, or once again the fight phase. So it's a good defensive strat, and it's 1 Death Guard unit that was selected as a target of an attack. And I say unit, that's quite important.
Mm-hmm.
Until the end of the phase, add 2 to the toughness characteristic of models in that unit. So
this is infantry only, though.
Is it infantry only? I thought it did unit.
No, this is infantry only. I'm 99% sure because I don't think you can use it on Mortarion or a tank or anything like that. Let me just double check because
the obvious thing for me is a lot of anti-infantry weapons on infantry, so power fists. They tend to be about the strength 6 to 8 to 10 range, and this allows like your Blight Lord Terminators potentially to go from being wounded on a 3 to being wounded on a 5. And if you can get that sort of use from this strat, that's where it's best employed. I think it is best used on Blight Lords because normally.
Sorry, I found it now. It's a Death Guard attached unit, so that's what stops it from working on vehicles and stuff like that.
It's another attached unit. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So it's best used on the cases where like their attack is 1 strength higher than your toughness value.
I mean, I don't know many ways of getting -2 to wound in this game that I can think of. And one of the most important breakpoints for me is strength 8 because there's a lot of strength 8 stuff.
A lot.
And I've got my Terminators. You wounded me on a 3. I pop a CP. You now wounded me on a 5. You know, and I'm 2 up, 4 up.
Do you know what is strength 8? The new Emperor's Children Demon Princes, and I have played a lot of them the last couple of weeks. And them wounding Terminators on a 5 is chef's kiss.
Yeah, so I think I don't know of many ways or any ways of getting -2 to wound really. So I think this is a sleeper one. I think you know if you're explaining your army to someone at the start of the game and you're like, oh, by the way, I can give an attached unit +2 toughness. I think most people will go, you know, okay, whatever, you know, but it's really good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of strength 4 weaponry in the game as well.
Yeah.
And that puts you from 5s to 6s. So it is halving effectively the damage for.
I mean, even as a -1 to wound. So, you know, someone's got a strength 8 weapon, they're firing at your Plague Marines, you know, putting them up to toughness 8. That's a lot, you know, that's what, 19% more Plague Marines that survive.
Yeah.
It's not nothing, you know.
No, not at all. It is a good little strat. It's handy back pocket strat.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Right, the next one. This is where I was talking about maybe this would have been better off earlier, but this is a Rabid Infusion, and it's 1 CP, and it's just the start of the fight phase, and it affects 1 Death Guard unit that includes 2 character models. And until the end of the fight phase, your unit has the Fight's First ability.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily want to take Foul Blightspawn, especially now that he's fight first is only once per game.
Oh, I want to take lots of foul blight spawn.
Yeah, there's other reasons to take them for not just the fight first, but let's say I don't want to take one. Now I've got it in a can because the important thing about this is it only works on units that have two attached characters. Um, so you're not doing it with Death Shroud, you're not doing it with Mortarion, you're not doing it with anything else. This is Plague Marines and Potswalkers,
Yes.
effectively. And you're not doing it on Potswalkers because who cares if Potswalkers fight first?
I mean,
I'm sure there's some edge cases, but yeah.
I mean, as you said, the only way you can get fights first on the Poxwalkers is if you've got Typhus and
Yeah.
the Bellman, and
Yeah.
if you need, normally you've got enough Poxwalkers to keep Typhus alive to swing, and that's
Yeah.
all you really care about.
Yeah.
So
I didn't take a Foul Blightspawn in my list that I played on Wednesday, and I thought I'm going to rely on this because then I've got sustained 1 and crits on 5. Perfect. If I need to fight first, 1 CP, I've got that covered, no problem. I played Tyranids, and he went, I'm actually going to do Shadow of the Warp in my own turn. So he battle shocked pretty much my entire army, including my Plague Marines. I no longer had any way of giving them fights first. And they did basically nothing. Although I won that game quite handily, the actual Plague Marines were massacred.
yeah, my issue is that the Foul Blightspawn has other things that he gives to a unit.
The 9-inch, yeah.
And because of that, I think that you can see him being played anyway.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm almost saving a CP by having him in the unit. I know his abilities only once per game now, but as someone who's played a lot of Blood Angels with their once per game fights first, that's it. That's all you need it for generally.
And to be fair, with this, it can be once per game for free, and then once per game again.
Yep.
I guess my only concern is, I want that crits on 5s naturally, because I don't want to spend it on the Plague Marines. I want to spend that on the Death Shroud.
No, I mean, I still run the old combo of Biop and this guy, simply so that the Foul Blightspawn, because I still think it's a good combo, so I've got the other strats open to other units.
Yeah, and I just think this one with the fights first, because it only works on the 2 character models, it is really good, but it's situational.
Yeah.
It's not one that you are going to be using every game. Put it that way.
It depends on whether you've got, because of the way fights first work.
Yeah.
You'll only use this really if you've got 2 units with 2 characters. Now I know I do. I generally run 2 units of Plague Marines, but a lot of people won't. They'll run 1 and then lots of other units. So it's okay. It is situational, but it is worth having.
I think literally, it's if you absolutely, you've decided I want that slot for a Malignant Playcaster, and I still want natural crits on 5s. This is auto include. If you've got a Foul Blightspawn naturally, this is just, again, it's a back of your pocket, get me out of a hole type strat.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next one is Mobile Vector, and this is really, for me, a bit of a nothing strat. So it's your movement phase before the reinforcement step. 1 Death Guard character unit that is not leading a unit. He can join a unit that is within 2 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically. However, I have a couple of problems with this. Firstly, he can't join a unit that already has a character in it. And and even though Plague Marines can have 2 characters joined, the way it's worded insinuates that if they've got 1 character in, you then can't join the second character in, because it says you cannot join an attached unit that already has 2 leader units or 1 character units leading it. So it's kind of a dud. And secondly, you can technically join a unit out of coherency, because all you have to do is be within 2 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically. But if you've got a unit of 10 or 6 or more unit in the unit, that could make you out of coherency. because you've
Yeah,
got to move in 2 of 2. So it's a poorly worded strat, and how often will this come up? Virtually never.
I think I was thinking about this when it came out, and the only way I could see this working, and it's the edgiest of edge cases. I mean, this is like the ice wall at the side of a flat Earth type thing. Just to be clear, I'm not a flat earther. I'm just.
Heard it here
But,
first, guys.
So let's say you've got a Lord of Contagion with 3 Death Shroud. You've also got Typhus solo in it. You deep strike them next to each other. Someone precisions out. Your Lord of Contagion. Wow, I can put Typhus in, but that is.
I'm swimming in CP and don't want that.
Any really good strats that we actually are going to use.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people much cleverer than me that have somehow decided this strat has a place. Just to be clear as well, if you move and attach to a unit that hasn't yet moved, those models can move, but they can't take you out of coherency. So you've probably given them a 2-inch move at best.
It gets worse. It's even worse. Okay,
because people sort of thought, oh, well, I can move into it and then that unit can move, but a model itself has already moved. It doesn't lose that status for joining another unit. So I'm really not sure what they were smoking when they wrote this one.
Maybe they're trying to balance it out, like real S tier, strats, and then like some awful F tier ones.
Yeah, they can't all be crackers, can they?
Okay, the last one is, there's some issues with it. So it's Death's Head for 1 CP, and it's in your shooting phase. And the first thing is, it can only be done by a biop unit. So it's a biop unit that is has not shot this phase, and it's not with engagement range. So technically, unlike normal grenades, you could advance and do this. Cool, nice. Or fall back and do this. Wow. And what happens is you select one enemy unit that is within 8, excluding vehicles, and visible to your unit. Until the start of your next turn, that unit has the effect of all plagues from the Gift of Nurgle. But it's not afflicted, so it doesn't get -1 toughness.
Yes, very strange. And again, this is the edgiest of edge cases, I think. I would pretty much use this as, for whatever reason, you haven't been able to proc the final ingredient, so you don't have 2 active. You get to a turn where it's like, oh, I need the +1 to save because I need to kill stuff. But I also have, I don't know, overwhelming. So taken hold, or what's the one where you have to take an objective?
Yeah, taken hold.
No, Storm Hostile Objective. Yeah. So let's say you've got Storm Hostile. You've got a load of 2 OC units you engage with, and somehow you're not killing enough to kill them. So you fall back and do this, and you out OC them. I'm sure there's other ways that it's going to matter, but
I think that's the edge case. Is sometimes you need to reduce a unit's OC to take an objective, and it's just a good way of doing it. Because as we said, like, you'll normally pick the +1 to their save first, followed by the hit rolls modifier, and this is sort of like they've got like some 2 OC models that want to be down to 1 OC.
Yeah. So, and I think, to be honest, you can do it a better way because you can. I guess the thing is, you can't guarantee that you're going to get the final ingredient. So this is kind of that in a can, I guess. And you can't guarantee that the new guy is going to do it either. Lord of Pots is. So it's just a third way of getting multiple contagions.
The worst thing about this strat is that there are better strats in the like. It's fine. It's an absolutely fine. Like it could be useful. I can see uses, but in general, if I have the CP for this, there's other things that I want to spend it on.
Yeah, because if you're giving something -1 OC, just kill it. Apart from that edge case of falling back and you're not strong enough to kill whatever infantry
You've got
unit
one
that is.
putrefier by himself, just like
Yeah. But even then, because it's like. It's -1 OC to a minimum of 1. Like, what can't 5 Plague Marines kill down enough to out OC that's not a vehicle? So I don't know.
You can't do this on vehicles anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. So you've got something that's not a vehicle that you will out OC if they only had OC 1, but you can't kill. I mean, that's a very small list of 40k data sheets that that I can think of. Maybe Deathwing Knights.
Yeah, well, but they're
Oh,
OC1
they're
anyway.
OC1 anyway, yeah, so it has to be
Maybe
something really tough with OC2.
maybe Inner Circle Companions with a Judicia.
Yeah, because they're going to get fight first, so you just fall back and you just OC1 them, maybe. You've already hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, but then there's better ways. There's better ways.
Yeah, I'd fall back and then just kill them with something else.
Yeah.
It's an edge case strat. When it works and it does the thing that you want it to do, you'll probably think it's the best strat that's ever been invented. But
it's probably something nice to have in your back pocket.
So I think half of these strats are so good that you'll probably forget the other three exist over the course. I mean, I know that was what it was like in the index. There was a couple of strats that you'd always use, like Cloud of Flies, Sustained One. What else did you use? You never did. And I think that's going to be the same in this. You're going to use those first three strats, probably the first two, the vast majority of the time. And the rest of these, you probably forget they exist.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so now we have got two lists, one written by me and one written by Rob, and how we have both played Champions of Contagion. My list is as it's come up now, so I'm running a buy-up with Final Ingredient, and he will be with a foul blight spawn in a block of 10 Plague Marines. For me, I've played this as a block quite a lot. It works. They're in a Rhino. Rhinos have got better now, so they reroll wounds. I feel like you don't have to spend any CP on it. I can spend the CP in other places. Perfect. Demon Prince of Nurgle, free CP. So how this has worked for me is when I play the game, I like to pick an expansion objective. And this is going to be really weird. You're probably looking at the icon bearer here. We're like, what is this? But the Lord of Poxes and the icon bearer join the unit of 7. And the whole idea is they're +1 OC. They can sit on an objective and make anyone that comes on -1 OC with the threat of either fighting first or with a demon prince behind them that could heroic in. Generally, I've been able to hold objectives this way, and it is about 450 points. But if you can hold your expansion for 5 turns, then that's 20 victory points, and it's nothing to be sniffed at. And then what else would you expect in Death Guard at the moment? A Lord of Contagion with 6 Death Shroud, a Lord of Virulence with 3 Death Shroud, and then 3 bloat drones with heavy blight launchers, because the Lord of Virulence with 3 heavy bloat drones, it just picks things up. Like, it's so good at the moment. And lastly,
they're going up in points. 100%.
Oh god, yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm not too upset because I like normal bloat drones as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone's like, oh no, I can't play.
You can't even take them, can you? Because for 10 points more, you're going to take a HBL. So.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Three units of 10 Poxwalkers, because I like the early game board control, and the fact that OC1, I expected them to go down to OC0. Infiltrating OC1 it's nice. It's good to have.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we don't get sticky in this detachment, so again, that's important for people that are coming into this for the first time. That change contagion is what's replaced sticky as the detachment rule. Yeah. So this, it's pretty much like a clock for the opponent. It's like, hey, look, I've got Potswalkers on that objective. I wouldn't necessarily always put them on an objective, because obviously if they get overwhelming force or storm hostile, potentially you're giving them 3 points. But the counter argument to that is, cool, okay, so you've scored some points, but you've had to kill the Potswalkers that were hidden, so this is melee, it's the only way you're really going to kill them. Now you're close. And crappy units aren't going to kill 10 Potswalkers. You've got to have a substantial amount of attacks. So it's a massively good trade.
And also, if they sit near the block of 10 Marines with the Blight Spawn and Bob Putrefier, they're a really good way of sucking in that charge and then heroicing into something and getting free movement for your buy-off on your opponent's turn. I've sometimes been able to slingshot my Plague Marine unit around, and then in my turn, they're in a much better position to be, going into your opponent's lines. Yeah,
no, really good. And I like the combo of Icon Bearer and the Lord of Poxes. I'm always up for something that's a little bit different. So, yeah, nice catch. I like it.
Okay, and this is Rob's list. I'll let him go through it with you.
Right. So this is the list I played on Wednesday. I think now that I've played it, I would go back to the fights first. So I would probably change the playcaster for a foul blight spawn. But I think I've already explained my logic of why I tried it this way, which is trying to get the fights first through the strat, and then obviously having sustained one to make them more killy. I don't know how you built your 10 Plague Marines, so what I've done is I'm a melee guy, and historically I've always run the 4 heavy weapons, so the 5 heavy weapons, including the thingy, and then I've also run the 2 spitters,
the anti-infantry 2+1s, yep,
and then 3 of the double weapon guys. So historically, that's how I've always run it, because with lethals on 5s and sustained 1s and sustained 2s in the index, those things punch up. Really, it's just a weight of dice.
And blight launchers have had a bit of a glow up as well. So,
yeah. So I've totally changed my view now. I don't think you need that much melee anymore, because shooting is now good in Death Guard.
Yeah.
So now I still run the 5 heavy because I want them to kill. But I now run 2 flamers, plague flamers.
Mm-hmm.
I run 2 blight launchers because they get the benefit of the Lord of Virulence as well. Just because they are blast. And then the last one's a bit of an open slot. Can be a melter, can be a plasma. I like the melter just because it can threaten something.
Do you prefer the melter or the plasma? Because I've built mine as plasma. However, I've played a few games now, and I've almost wished I've had melter.
Most people shrug when you fire plasma if it's just one. I know you get one on the champion, don't you, as well? Yeah. But I'm not going to overcharge my champion because it's a heavy melee weapon. So if I'm overcharging, I'm only overcharging the plasma guy. And I know someone like Aidan from Disgusting Resilient, he runs 3 plasma, and that's obviously a route to go. But I like the Overwatch threat of having 2 flamers, and I like having 2 blight launchers because they're just really, really good. So currently, melter, to answer your question. So yeah, that I would change that now. I probably wouldn't have the Plaguecaster, even though there is an argument there for it still. Dim Prince of Nurgle for the same reason as you. I want that strat decrease. He's got low knot now, so you can put 10 Potswalkers, which I did have, by the way. They're not on this list, but I did have 10 Potswalkers as well.
It's my fault, sorry.
No, it's fine. So 10 Potswalkers, you can infiltrate them, and then obviously he can get low knot from being near the Potswalkers. But yeah, fantastic. Lord of Contagion. So I've got the old 12 Death Rad Terminators, 6 and 6. I've since changed that for my current list to 6, 3 and 3.
Yeah.
And I have 3 of them without a leader because I think they're genuinely good enough now.
Oh, and sometimes if your opponent doesn't commit enough, you can just, rapid ingress 3 and be like, there's that there.
Yeah. They're still going to kill anything,
Yeah.
It just, the downside to, especially in this detachment, of not giving them a leader is you can't use strats on them.
Yeah.
So that's why I went with 6 and 6. In Virulent, the VV one, the index-like one, I definitely have 6 and 3, or 6, 3 and 3. I think in this particular detachment, 6 and 6, there's an argument for it because no leader equals no strats. So if I was going to do 6 and 3, I would put the Lord of Contagion with the 3, and I would put the Lord of Virulence with the 6. And the reason I would do it that way round is because 6 Death Rad are going to kill anything, even without sustained and lethal. Mm-hmm. I would argue there's still such a big brick of hitting power. But having the reroll to wounds on the Flamer, I don't know if I shared it in our group, but I flamed a toughness 12 NID with 6 Death Shroud, and with the rerolls, I wounded it 15 times with a +1 save, and that was on 6s.
Yeah.
So having those rerolls is massive. And as an Overwatch threat, for anti-infantry 4 up, I've got 7d6 flamer shots, wounding you at worst on 4s.
Well, eight technically with the Lord of Virulence, because you get 2 from the champion.
Yeah, you get his as well, and they're even better because they're anti-infantry 2+, and they've got AP, so they're even better. So you just turn into this really scary Overwatch threat. A lot of Virulence with 3. I'm probably not going to waste the Overwatch because it's just not enough dice.
No, I find when I've played like armies like Eldar, they're really good at stripping their dice that they use for like special abilities, so they don't get the +2 inch movement. Not because like I would Overwatch them, but the threat is there that they don't want to be Overwatched.
Yeah, and I think the rerolls just make it so reliable.
Yeah.
3 HBL bloat drones, because why not? They're just so good.
Yeah.
Downside to them, and this is data sheet specific rather than detachment specific, but is the fact they've got blast weapons, which is really good for Lord of Virulence, really bad for being tagged.
Yes, yeah, I've had that.
Combat. Whereas the other ones, the cheaper ones that we know and love, can fall back and shoot and charge and everything else. These
Fantastic.
can't.
The combat ones are still really good at
really good
shredding things.
And then 2 blight haulers. I put these in reserve because then you're guaranteeing melter. Oh no, you're not actually, are you? Because they're 18-inch range, so you're not guaranteeing melter, but still.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I've been playing a lot of Emperor's Children recently, and I was playing the Fly-Blown Host detachment at the start because I liked infiltrating, scouting, poxwalkers. That's gone now. However, I took my Phytic Blight Haulers because there's a strap for -1 to wound, and their melters are now that they've had a glow up where they're +1 to hit and wound. If you're fighting against like toughness 9 tanks where they go to toughness 8, you're hitting and wounding on 2s. I found they were just wrecking any light vehicles on the board so consistently.
And in Contagion, they're -5 AP, so they probably don't even get a save.
No, it's so good. Like even the missiles where you think, it's only the old missile, it's strength 9, AP 2. No, it's AP 3, and +1 to wound potentially against something that's now -1 toughness. It's like, as we said, you don't get much -1, -2 to wound. This guy can get like +2 to wound on his rolls.
There's definitely a case to rapid ingress these. If you do it in a safe way so that you can get your guaranteed melter that way.
Yeah.
I put 1 in reserve and I put 1 on the board. And that worked really well for me. Because I put it in reserve, came out, it had a really nice firing angle. All right, it wasn't in melter, but the thing that it was shooting was in Contagion from another unit. So, AP 5, hitting on 2s, wounded on 3s. Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight, Rob.
Sorry, one last thing. One thing I found really interesting, I'll just get your take on this. Neither one of us has used any War Dogs. And in Index, they were stapled onto most lists, weren't they?
Yes, absolutely.
Brigands especially. And I'd really find it interesting. Are there any of the other detachments, and I know this is particularly about this detachment, but this detachment or any of the others, I'm not so sure War Dogs are needed anymore. They don't benefit from this detachment at all, that I can see.
I mean, I think they still benefit from -1 toughness and armor save to your opponents. Like
they same as they ever did, yeah.
I think that looking at it from a team's perspective, you now don't need these guys, like War Dogs with them, which is a massive boost. And also, as we've just said, like with the Blight Haulers, other things have better synergy with this army now.
I do think 2 Blight Haulers now is 180. A Brigand's 165. We've got a 3-up, 5-up save. They've got a 3-up, 5-up save. But we've got 18 wounds or 20 wounds now across 2 models. Sorry. So they've got, 12?
Yeah.
With 2 separate models or a unit of 2. OC6 if we've got 2 of them versus OC8.
We've got a 5-up in combat, which is very nice.
Which they don't. Obviously, their melters +4, but I always roll a 1 on one of them, so always.
Yeah.
So I actually think blight haulers have been mediocre for all of 10th, and now they're not.
No,
Now they're not.
They're good.
And 2 of those versus 1 war dog. I think I'm going to take 2 of these every time now.
Yeah, 100%.
So I know that's not specific to this detachment, but
Oh, no,
I think it's the reason why I've got 2 in my list in this detachment rather than a war dog, because these can benefit. So.
And I've been playing 2 in my lists in Flyblown Host. It's only Champions of Contagion where I've sort of put them to one side because I'm relying on Death Shroud to do a little bit more of the heavy lifting. But yeah, I think they've been fantastic so far with the Codex.
Perfect. Well, sorry for interrupting you, and thank you very much for having me on.
No, thank you. Hopefully next week we will be talking about Virulent Vectorium. So hopefully you guys will join us. Hopefully Rob will join me again. And once again, thank you to our sponsors, Glasshammer, Terrain Forge, and Trident Futureworks. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.
Bye.